ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。ナム妙法蓮華経。And hello, everyone. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I hope this finds you healthy, well, and secure. My name is Sylvain. I don't say that often. I figure you can figure that out. And been practicing and learning and studying and researching Buddhism for well over 40 years. And we are talking about Nichiren Shonin's excellent scholarship and teaching for this age, this Dharma age of Mappo. Somebody asked me recently about Mappo. It's kind of it's just a simple time reference. So Shakyamuni, when he was teaching to the level of his students over time, and eventually leading him to the culminating teachings of the Lotus Sutra, the self-practice, self-actualization of Buddha in the Lotus Sutra sermon, he spoke of time periods of 500 years, and that in the final 500-year period after his passing, which is added to the previous 500. So you have the former day, the middle day, and the latter day, the Mappo age, which we are now in, represents 2,500 years after his passing. And this age has an arbitrary figure of 10,000 years of duration, is a time period when our humankind, with our emergent mind, have developed to the capacity and understanding, the capacity for understanding and ability to abstract great deals of understanding. In opposition to that, commensurate with that, we are absolutely barraged by distraction and occupying our attention at so much of the time that we scarcely even consider the thought of how we ourselves are manufacturing our existence, our experience of life. And so consequently, because we can't be bothered to concentrate on those things, the teachings of self-practice to actualize Buddha-ness, Buddha suchness, is disappearing. There's a constant thread throughout all of the ages of Buddhism of this this concern, this anxiety about the teachings disappearing, losing them. And we now are in the age when this is most prevalent, most able, and in different ways. It's not just that it gets silenced and people aren't telling each other about self-practice and attaining Buddha enlightenment of our experience. But there's also the confounding element of many, many detractors or users, manipulators, what might be called bad teachers, who will use the teachings of Shakyamuni to their own purposes, for their own edification, for their own money grabbing, their political means, their egotistical needs, so on and so forth. And so even though it may appear, oh yeah, everyone's heard of Buddhism and there's this Buddhism, that Buddhism, and so on and so forth, what is actually happening is that Buddhism, the true teachings of Shakyamuni and self-realization, is being drowned out by this cacophony of misinformation. That is the reality of this age, and this is something Shakyamuni, the founder of Buddhism, identified in his day. He knew this day was coming. He knew that there would have to be then certain champions, certain votaries of the actual teaching who would maintain a stalwart dedication not only for their own self-realization and the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, but to endeavor not only to spread that teaching, but to spread it with a clarifying hammer, if you will, to push out the misinformation and the noise of those bad teachers that would use the idea of the teachings for their own gain. So it's no small task. Shakyamuni knew that this age was coming, and it is often termed by different monikers, Mappo being the most straightforward. Nichiren talks about this a lot. But it's also known as the defiled age, or the age of defilements, or the age of the loss of the pure teachings, or in some form, however it's translated into the language that you're familiar, indicates this time period when, although we're most capable of attaining and practicing correctly to our own enlightenment, we have to do so in the midst of a great deal of obstacles to that learning, to that opportunity for self-practice, self-realization, realization of Buddha. And that is Mappo. So, that answered. As we continue, and we're going to complete this Gosho being a highly valued and respected goal, right? Like Go Hanzon, Gosho, show being a writing, right? So these are the writings of Nichiren. So that's why we say Gosho. This letter to Yasaburo, the boatman Yasaburo, we covered in the last video, so go watch that if you want to know more about that situation historically. But now Nichiren is moving into the issue of I hate to use these words, but let's go ahead and figure them out, okay? The eternal Buddha, the Buddha, the time without beginning, all of that. You hear me talk about these subjects a lot, but Nichiren is going to address this immediately, and he's also going to address, what was the other thing? Oh, yes. Something we keep returning to, that, scholars like to lump things into categories. And in some ways, my endeavor here on this channel is to kind of, on the one hand, I want to push out all the bias and misinformation, translation bias, cultural bias, and all of that, so that we can get to the meat of the matter. What is Nichiren pointing to in Shakyamuni's teachings of self-practice? That is what we practice, Buddhism as it was meant to be practiced. But there's also a bias that comes from academia, right? because academia likes to chunk things into categories, and they have a hard time taking a holistic picture of the entirety. And to be fair, there's a lot of writings and sermons and commentaries on Shakyamuni's teachings, right? So there's a popular argument, popular not because everybody likes it, but because it's the subject of the day recently, of Nichiren's interpretation of original enlightenment, which was unearthed or described probably most broadly by Tendai from 6th century China, right? But it's always been there. It's something Shakyamuni referred to. And so Nichiren, being our mentor in our contemporary mind, sifts through all this to get to the essence of what is meant by these terms in whatever language, and realize that an English translation of all of this stuff is once again a cultural step removed from the expressions that were in Prakrit originally, a very conceptual and language of the day throughout all the caste system in India. It wasn't a special Brahmin version of Sanskrit or Pali or any of that. It was an everyday man language. And these early languages were very influenced by tone, rhythm, sound, inflection. They were singing languages. This is where the word chant comes from, right? Chant being a Latin derivation of, like in French, chanter, or in Spanish, chant is to sing. And the sermons originally were delivered in a rhythmic form to make them easier to memorize and to keep clear, right? When you memorize a song and your friends memorize it with you, you're correcting each other with, that's not what he says this. Well, let's go look at the liner notes, right? Well, they didn't have liner notes back then. So for hundreds of years, Shakyamuni's sermons were practiced as rote memorization. A point I made in the last, and I've made in other videos, that they were memorized as first-person teachings. So we were all actualizing kind of a neat trick of Shakyamuni's to say, eventually you'll understand that this is you, Buddha, reciting these very teachings of yourself. As I've often said, we don't really have teachers other than our own mind. That is the ultimate teacher. People can say things to you like I am now over and over and over again, but unless you decide to learn it and teach yourself, there is no teaching happening here. I'm just exercising my verbalizations of my insights so that hopefully you can grab onto some of that information for your own insights. That is your path to Buddha, right? Buddha wisdom, if you will. All right, I get sidetracked sometimes, and my apologies. So let's get into this and see how Nichiren directly engages these issues of eternal Buddha and the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. Very pivotal, very important teachings, but I fear that, myself included, when we're first starting out in learning about Buddhism, we get to this 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, or in Japanese, Ichinen Sanzen, and we just go, oh yeah, that's all the pre-existing stuff, and we kind of shelve it. We don't really think about what that means. But the implication is very much in the here and now, in each single moment, birth, death, that we're existing, right? Remember that compressed time idea. So let's get into it. He goes on, then how are we different from that Buddha whose image emerged from the sea. You remember that's a reference to an old Japanese tale about Buddhism coming from Korea to Japan and how it was repelled and brought back. And it's in the mythology of Hachiman and so on and so forth. We don't need to investigate that. You can investigate that on your own. I encourage you to. Shakyamuni, the master of the teachings, enlightened since countless dust particle kalpas ago. Remember, this is a reference of unfathomable time. Well, actually, think Big Bang, right? This beginning of time. The only, quote, only I alone who can save and protect, end quote, is in fact ourselves living beings. Now, this is a quote about in the sermon Shakyamuni delivers of self-practice of the Lotus Sutra. He's claiming in the Tathagata chapter that although you see me as a human being having attained Buddhahood in this lifetime, two things you need to realize. Because I've demonstrated as a simple human being that you can achieve Buddha, you should be able to also self-practice. But, Buddha isn't something that I invented or I discovered. Buddha, this knowledge, this engine of existence, has been here all along. That's why, in your human form, you are able to attain it just as I have. No difference. Buddha's Buddha. Which was quite a drop-the-mic moment for the people of his day. People still struggle with that, right? So, is in fact ourselves living beings. So again, Nichiren is pointing out, when Shakyamuni said, I have attained this Buddha since time immemorial, time without beginning, it's a kind of a mind breaker where he's saying, well, this human body that I'm in isn't something timeless. The Buddha that I've achieved is. And it's no different for anything in this universe, including you, all living beings. You have this component of wisdom, enlightenment, clarity already within you. You're just not using it. You're choosing instead attachment to the other 8 consciousnesses, and you're completely enamored and distracted with that. And this is why you suffer. Because your attachments and your anchoring of thingness is the very thing that's causing your stress and anxiety. If you can let that go, peer above it to your innate Buddha connection, then all of that subsides and you can live life fully, free as much as possible of stress and anxiety, because your stress and anxiety won't be simply self-actuated, manifested, because you're the one doing that, right? You and me, the royal you're, right? This is what is meant by the Lotus Sutra's doctrine of the single thought moment comprising the 3,000 realms. It is the action of, quote, always I dwell here, preaching the Dharma, end quote. Yet even though we are ourselves the august Lotus Sutra and Shakyamuni, ordinary worldlings do not know this. So in just a couple of sentences, Nichiren has nailed this primary concept down again. This idea that we are no different, that Buddha is extant throughout all processes of life itself, but only in this precious manifestation of this, what I call apparatus of self and other, this samsaric reality that we experience. How do we experience it? Through our hands? through our eyes, those are all facilitators to the experience. But where we truly experience the drama and everything of life, universe to you and me, is in the mind. And the mind emerges from this apparatus. It doesn't emerge from an asteroid. It doesn't emerge from space-time. It emerges, although you could make an equation that would take you to you and me, because we are space-time, but space-time is a concept. A thing that's only a thing because we conceptualize it. It exists in mind, right? As an experience. And so if we can take that facility, that mind, and uncouple it from its experience of thingness and stuff and all phenomena, and just uncouple it so that it can observe that very thing, suddenly all of our fears and attachments and emotions about every single little thing becomes objectively less stressful because we're not attached to it. We don't fear losing it because everything is a flow, a process, right? And this takes us back to the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. How long is a moment? You can't measure it. It's so brief. And yet we're experiencing billions and billions of those in every moment, every minute, moment, not minute, minute, uncountable moments of birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. In each of those thought moments, we actually, our mind can conceive of an unfathomable amounts of potentials, possibilities. And when you think of it that way, our human consciousness, our human perceptive mind is incredibly superficial. If you consider that your mind is actually experiencing hundreds of thousands of possibilities in each moment. That's going on. And decisions are being made, albeit based on your energy, your tendencies, your conditions, your karma. And out of those unfathomable numbers of potentials, we are deciding or filtering out a particular moment. Ask yourself how your life condition can completely alter with the right stimulus. A loud bang, a loved one touching your cheek. I mean, how many examples could you come up with in your daily life where you're traveling down a momentum, a kinetic idea of life that suddenly, boom, everything changes and suddenly you're thinking everything differently? That's because your mind is ready to go in so many directions you can't even fathom. So what is it that keeps us in that certain arena of being? Those are all decisions that we're making with our monkey mind, right? Our earthbound, adhered, attached, fearing, anxiety-ridden mind. And to the degree of attachment of the moment, our emotional states and our mind goes and drifts in those areas and just digs a little hole and sits in it until something changes it, either ourselves or our external to ourselves, which is in Buddhism the same thing. So what Nichiren is saying is what Shakyamuni was saying, is that you can decide to get out of that flow and objectively see life, all of it. Which, by the way, is really freeing. Not being in the muck, or as the analogy I've used of being in the rapids and bouncing off the rocks and the waves and trying to keep your head above water so you can breathe, as opposed to standing on the side of the rapids and still experiencing the energy and the strength and the noise and the bubbles and the beauty and the fear and all of it, but albeit at a safe distance. Wow, the rapids are amazing. Not necessarily what you're thinking when you're in them, right? This is a lot like awakening Buddha. Oh, that's what's happening here. How amazing is this? Right? Without being pulled into the undertow. So, let's go on. Being pulled into the undertow is ordinary worldlings, and ourselves are, the Lotus Sutra, self-actualizing. When we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, we awaken Buddha in our mind, in our constructed mind, right? The Fathoming the Lifespan, right, the Lifespan chapter, states, quote, I cause the deluded beings, though they are near me, not to see, end quote. The difference between delusion and enlightenment is like the four views of the Sala Grove. Let's see what that's about. It is said that when Shakyamuni Buddha entered nirvana in the Sala Grove, those present perceived the scene differently according to their capacity and level of spiritual attainment. Right? The Buddha, who is the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, represents the attainment of Buddhahood by the entire Dharma realm. So there it is again. What is Buddha? Buddha is the 3,000 realms. In other words, your mind, which is busily at work and you're hardly paying attention to, except superficially, your mind in its entirety is itself Buddha. Because all of the realms, all of the potentials, all of the possibilities that exist in each thought moment are the perception that is unattached. Everything's a potential, everything's a possibility, not an experienced reality now. It's like, interesting. It's like language. You can read and study languages your entire life, right? The way we attempt to communicate with one another. But if you understand all languages from the standpoint of all the created characters, like the alphabet, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, the English alphabet, right? Do that with any language, and suddenly the language is demystified because it's a construct, various constructs of those basic elements. So if you think of a thought moment, 3,000 realms constantly occurring, abiding through time, measurement, then everything that you experience is a chosen manifestation of some of that potential. And if you don't like what you're manifesting right now, so change it. And the idea here is change it to its Buddha, and then everything becomes a matter of execution. The demon who appeared. Oh, no. Now, this is something I keep coming back to with Nichiren. You might get the idea that, okay, let me try this. And you sit down and you get yourself a mandala, easily attainable, and you start chanting to mandala to open your Gohonzon mind, your visibility of the potential, your self-actualizing Buddha, and you say, bring it on, give it to me. And because it's always been there in your mind, it's like, okay, I'll give you little hints, but you're so enamored. So many years you've been following your tendencies, your momentum, and your conditions that you've created for your life that you see some stuff, or you think you see some stuff that seems to have changed in my life, and there might be something to this. But it's not any major aha, like a car accident or trauma, right? Which unfortunately is often the way we learn things in life. It's crazy. And what Nichiren says, as Shakyamuni was described throughout many, many years of teaching, when you try to change or alter your perception, your mind, the statement, change your mind, sounds like it's almost flippant, right? But truly, if you want to change the way you experience life, you have to get serious. Because remember, 3,000 realms in a single thought moment means that in the next 5 minutes, you're going to have billions of mind decisions, all because there's so many decisions. I mean, you just go with the flow. You basically are just riding the wave, but there's an ocean of possibility in your mind, but you're just riding your little wave at your little beach, being Bob, being Sylvain, being Juanita. If you really want to awaken Buddha, well, then you have to perceive all of it. Oh, that's... Even if you use my analogy of turning a light on in the attic, your attic is full of stuff. And it's going to be impossible to perceive every little speck of dust in that attic until you really dedicate yourself to looking, right? So we keep coming back to this, and Nichiren enforces this constantly. You must be single-minded about Buddha. You must be focused. You must be determined. And you must have confidence. I'm going to awaken Buddha now. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm chanting. That's what I absolutely must do. What kind of conviction do you have to have? Well, Nichiren's going to use the stories of the sutras. The demon who appeared before the youth of the snow mountains was Indra in transformed guise. In other words, here's the story, an expedient means. We're going to use imagination to conceptualize, to give personages to these functions of the mind. The dove that fled to King Sibi was the god Vishvakarman, King Universal Brightness, who entered the citadel of King Kalmasapada was Shakyamuni, the master of the teachings. The fleshly eye cannot know these things, but the Buddha eye discerns them. So these are all references to stories, various stories of a future Buddha, a personage of Buddha, speaking to an individual to test them. How determined are you to know the teachings of self-enlightenment? And in these various stories, the person, you and I, volunteer our flesh off our bodies. to indicate our sincerity, our deep, profound commitment, and saying, here, take my flesh. I'd rather reach enlightenment and know it than hang on to this flesh another moment. I'm not advising any of you to try that. What Nichiren is saying, and what I'm trying to convey, is to ask yourself, what degree of commitment would you have to be willing, absolutely willing, without condition, to rip the flesh off your own arm, let alone your body, in order to attain Buddha? It's hard to conceive of, isn't it? And yet this is the kind of conviction that if you're just, in other words, if you're just playing at this, then you're going to play at Buddha and you're going to get, something, but will it be satisfactory enough to keep you going? Or it's just a momentary game that you're playing? I win. Okay, later. I got to go be miserable again. Another way of reading this is to say, this isn't something you do in an afternoon. This is something you have to commit your life to. No, you don't have to rip your flesh off. Just know that if you expect profound results, you need to commit time, yourself, your attention, your mind to it. And gradually, those 3,000 realms that you're experiencing in every thought moment, it's going to start to shift your experience. Instead of just being in your normal tendencies, going along your Karen, your Bob, your Mike, your Juanita way, it's going to start to spread and move, and some things that you've been hanging on to, even unknowns to you because the decisions are being made karmically, they're going to stop being instantiated because they won't fit in the larger picture. And slowly your karma will shift in focus toward Buddha. And the more you chant, the more you study, the more confidence you have in your daimoku, the more your life will start to open potentials that you may never have seen there before. But they've been there all along. You just have never seen them to be able to engage with them, hang on to them, and experience them. Because that's the game of life. That's how the universe expands. That's how you and I expand. Change, constant flux. If you've ever caught yourself saying, my life never changes, I'm always going through these same habitual things, you're right. So what's the use of repeating them however long your life span is? If it's never going to change, why bother living? That's why traumas and things are often the only things that open our minds up to other potentials, other reviews of what's important to us, right? It's an opportunity to shift gears and move into another lane. Every time you chant the Daimoku, you focus a mandala to open your Gohonzon mind to experience Buddha. You're changing lanes. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot. And then you got to keep doing it because our tendency is to go right back into the old lane. So it takes a while. This is a commitment of time. Right? Anyone can be committed to an afternoon, 5 minutes. And there will be benefit from that, but your memory is really short and shallow. The following day, well, maybe that's just, that was pretty interesting, but, I mean, anything could do that. I've had a really good game of Dragon Ball and it did that. You see how the monkey mind just loves to keep us under its control, right? Our possessions, our fears, they're precious to us. It's so crazy how we like to act. The fleshly eye cannot know these things. In other words, the eye consciousness, right? The 8 consciousnesses. They're busy agglomerating things. But the 9th consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, knows the game. So immediately knowing the game, no longer attached. But that has to be a constant experience, right? In open space and in the great seas, there are paths by which birds fly and fish swim, though we cannot see them. These things are found in the text of the sutras. A wooden image is precisely a golden one, and a golden image a wooden one. Aniruddha's gold became first a hair, then a corpse. This is a reference to another teaching, talking about value, relative value. What does it matter if the egg is a chicken or a golden orb? This is just a matter of attachment and earthly experience that, if seen through the Buddha eye, would just be processes. They're just fascinations. We're not glued, we're not valuing them, making them, identifying with them. Because what is value but a measure of self? A self against something else. It's always a measure of self. But when you measure the entirety of the life process, then you place yourself in a completely different position, don't you? These things are not conceivable. Likewise, an ordinary worldling is precisely the Buddha, and the Buddha is precisely an ordinary worldling. This is the meaning of a single thought moment endowed with the 3,000 realms. Famous page-turning karma. End of the passage, quote, "Since I in reality attained Buddhahood, countless myriads of millions of nayutas of kalpas have passed," end quote. Right? We've already talked about that. Because the existence of Buddha doesn't reside in the body of Shakyamuni. The body of Shakyamuni is what enables, like you and I, the emergence of a mind, and the processes that that mind can witness are timeless. Thus, may not you two, husband and wife, be the master of teachings, the great enlightened world-honored one, reborn to help Nichiren. In other words, this is how profoundly I experience your assistance to me as I've been exiled to this place. What you are experiencing, and I am experiencing, is your Buddha nature. Sometimes you do things out of compassion for others, and you really don't understand what's motivating you. I just wanted to help them. Well, why did you want to help them? I don't know. They needed help, and I could help them, so I helped them. What you're not, see, that's part of your constantly extant Buddha mind. In certain situations, you put away that freight train of tendencies and conditions, and you act out of compassion. And you may not understand why, except that you do understand that you're doing it. But that's about as far as you think about it. But you are, in fact, manifesting Buddha. So how can you do that? At will. Chanting the law of Buddha. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Then you can manifest that compassionate self, that unglued from all things that keep you from behaving that way. And it just wells up. It's just there. How magnificent. Though the road between Ito and Kawana is quite short, it is far to communicate one's heart. I am writing you this letter for later on. Do not speak of it to others, but bear it in mind. If others learn even the slightest thing about it, it will go hard with you. Keep it in your heart and do not talk about it. With my deepest respect, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. So again, that thing about secrecy, because remember, this is shogun-run Japan. He just got exiled to an island to die, presumably. So if you talk about these things, these are profound learnings, profound teachings. And if you understand the merit of attaining Buddha and what these teachings are saying to you about the simplicity of simply invoking your relationship with Buddha, your mind's capacity to course in Buddha, there are many around you that might just, he's another one of Nichiren's people. You need to hang him, take his property. Can I have his sisters, his wife? Right? The nature of authoritarian governments is frightening, and people would much rather take an easy path than take one they have to be stalwart about. Another facet of Nichiren's explaining the dedication and the confidence one has to have in order to attain enlightenment. Not everyone is prepared or ready to hear this teaching. You best inculcate it into your own life well, such that you start to experience more and more of your Buddha, of the Buddha, in your daily life, so that you can create this kind of a force field, this kind of protection of that life condition, and be judicious about those with whom you share these teachings. Because you could just as well spark an enemy who will be your demise because of their fervent resistance to the idea of enlightenment, certainly through these teachings, because they've got convenient mythologies and other dragons and deities and stuff they can put their responsibility onto and say, well, that God doesn't want me to experience this, or that deity puts me in this place, and that's what I believe, and if you say different, you must die. Humans are really quite insane in that regard, right? They follow mythologies that more or less free them from responsibility for their own behavior. As Buddhists, we completely absorb that because we know that through our commitment to our enlightenment, we are our best selves. We are our best expression of everything that life has to offer. But for some, that's very intimidating. For some, they say, well, you think you're better than me? No. It's not an issue of that. How can you change this into a competition? This isn't about that. This is offering you a path to wellness and happiness and de-stressing. And some people aren't ready to hear that. So Nichiren is making this caution, especially because he's in a place where people are exiled to die. So obviously the population of the area isn't going to look too well upon him, let alone someone who supports him, right? This is the condition of medieval Japan. Not that it's that far away from our own experience today. We're very comfortable here in North America. But boy, the fanatic, crazy, warring, dictator, authoritarianship, inhumanity, it's all over the world. You only do a little bit of research on the internet, and occasionally it blips up in our talking heads on television. But I couldn't imagine being in Yemen right now. I couldn't imagine being in Venezuela or Brazil, or count how many places where all levels of atrocities are occurring. Ukraine at the moment. We all share in that, because that karma, we're a part of it. It's in our day, our time of Mapo. Right? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Awaken your Buddha, the Buddha in your mind. Let us be connected in that achievement, that we might influence our world in a life-nurturing, positive way, simply by our presence. You'll know when that happens in your life, because to whatever degree you've awakened Buddha, you will affect others, and people will start being drawn toward you and not even know why. Don't expect people to run up to you, drop to their knees, and say, "Teach me Buddha." They won't understand that. They don't know what that is. But they will come to you for advice, for assistance. They will ask you questions. They may even say, "I don't know why I'm asking you this, but I don't know, you seem like you could help." Or could you have? Yes, absolutely. It's an opportunity for you to connect, influence, support, be a bodhisattva. Be kind, generous. People will want to emulate that, and that will be a seed. You know, my mom, born deeply Christian, Catholic, when she talks to me, she's 86 now, when she talks to me about, she's always been the nervous type, and she loses her mind over the simplest things, and she's just like a runaway train. Oh, mom, I'll get her to calm down. You're doing it again. You're just talking to me, and you're reliving the experience. I know, I'm like this, blah, 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 blah. So next time, please, when you feel that coming on, try to get yourself to just take a deep breath. Just breathe for a moment. Nothing's going to change that quickly in your life. Take a moment to breathe. Settle your breathing. And you remember that little picture I sent you? It has Namo Myoho Renge Kyo down the middle. And you know, she'll interrupt me. How do you say this again? And I'll say, well, say it with me. Nice and slow. Relax. Okay, I'm ready. Namu, Namu. And I hear it with a French accent from her, which is really nice. And I get her to say it. And right in front of me, I watch her dissolve. She may not know it, but she will say, "Oh, Sylvain, you're such a wonderful son. You make me relax. I love talking to you." It's not me that she's talking about, is it? It's the life condition she's just shifted in, but she doesn't know to recognize it for herself. And yet, every opportunity I get, I plant the seed. And then sooner or later, I'll get a phone call. This happened about a month or so ago. I had my Monday morning call to Mom. And she said, "I have to tell you, I did what you said. I did what you suggested." And I thought, oh, what's this going to be? I wasn't sure. And she talked about the situation and this stranger who came at the front door, and she started to panic, and she said, "I have to breathe," like Sylvain said. I have to breathe. And I'm not sure. She didn't say she said Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. But you know what? It was in there. Again, she's an ordinary worldling, right? She doesn't know to practice this every day. And I don't know how far I will be able to nurture my mother into correct practice. But in her own way, she's walking toward it. And she's achieving benefits from it. And she's certainly heard it, and she's said it herself. If I can get her further, believe me, I'll try before she passes away. but I know I'm doing the work and I'm seeing the results in her behavior. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. That's not because of me, Sylvain, ego. That's because of Buddha. Buddha that connects all of us. That the more I put Buddha into my mind heart, if you want to visualize it that way, the more I can influence my environments. And you can say, well, you influenced her with your words. That would be egotistical. That would be samsaric. They weren't my words, they were my efforts. My attitude and my intent were to instantiate, for her to instantiate Buddha in her mind. I didn't give her anything, save maybe instruction. I assisted her to enlighten her mind. She doesn't understand that. Maybe she does, and I don't know it. I know that that was my intent. That is my attitude, and I get to watch it occurring, and that's deeply wondrous, right? And that's what we're all aiming for. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Awaken Buddha in your mind. Thank you so much for listening, for participating, for practicing. Have confidence in your practice, right? Use these tools, as many as I can provide, this channel, the audio podcast, the website with all of the free information, the bookstore, the Gohanzon store, right? Don't wait another minute. Actualize your real potential. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Goodbye for now. I will see you in the next one.